Buying your first home is supposed to feel like a milestone, a big, joyful, I made it moment. And for me it was, at least for about 2 hours. I had just finished unloading the last of the moving boxes into the living room when I heard it. 3 sharp knocks on the front door, fast and impatient, like whoever was on the other side thought I owed them money. I opened the door, still holding a half-empty box labeled bedroom stuff, and there she was. A woman in her mid-50s with a perfectly pressed polo shirt, oversized sunglasses, a clipboard clutched to her chest like a Bible, and the kind of haircut that screamed, "I want to speak to your manager." The moment I saw her, I knew I was meeting a Karen. "Can I help you?" I asked, trying to sound friendly despite the long day and sore arms. She didn't even say hello. "I'm Karen. I'm president of the HOA here in Oakwood Bluffs," she declared, like she was announcing royalty. "You're the new occupant, I assume?" "New owner," I corrected, "just moved in today." Her lips tightened. "That's going to be a problem." I blinked. "Sorry?" She pulled out a printed sheet of paper, standard HOA letterhead probably made in Microsoft Word 2007, and held it out like it was a court order. This property was not approved for sale to an outside party. The HOA did not authorize a transfer to someone outside our vetted community process. I took the paper, but didn't look at it. I just stared at her, genuinely confused. "You're saying I can't live here?" "I'm saying," she snapped, "we've already filed a grievance with the management company, and you'll likely be asked to vacate. We have standards here." Now, I've seen HOA drama online. I've read the Reddit stories, the viral Twitter threads. I always thought they were exaggerated. Turns out, they weren't. I laughed, not out of disrespect, but disbelief. "Lady, I bought this house with cash. I owned the deed. I signed the papers last week and closed 2 days ago." Karen's eyes narrowed. "That may be the case for now, but the board has rights. We have the authority to determine whether a resident fits the values of this neighborhood. And frankly, you don't seem like a good fit." I didn't know whether to be more insulted by her tone or by the fact that she said all of this before even learning my name. "Let me guess," I said. "I don't seem like a good fit because I didn't get your permission to exist here?" She didn't answer, just pursed her lips and muttered, "Don't say I didn't warn you," before walking off with the stiff posture of someone trying to win an imaginary dignity contest. I stood there on my porch, stunned. It was day 1. No parties, no noise complaints. I hadn't even had time to hang up my shower curtain, and this woman was already trying to evict me? I walked back inside, dropped the box, and sat on the floor. I could feel the frustration bubbling up, but I didn't let it take over, because she had no idea who she was dealing with. She thought I was just some random new guy, some outsider who had stumbled into her suburban fiefdom and now needed to be handled. What she didn't know was that I didn't just buy this house. I had bought 12 houses on this block, quietly, through different LLCs. Over the past 6 months, this neighborhood, it wasn't hers anymore. It was mine. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my doorbell ringing, twice, then 3 times in rapid succession, the kind of ring that says, "I have a clipboard and I demand your time." I already knew who it was. I opened the door to find a sealed envelope taped neatly to the glass with a bright red sticker that read, "Urgent, OH comp lines." Inside was a list of violations I'd apparently committed within my first 24 hours of living in the neighborhood. I'm not even kidding. Here's what it said. Violation 1, front door color, not approved by HOA Design Review Committee. Violation 2, trash bins visible from the curb. They were empty, and it was pickup day. Violation 3, improper placement of moving boxes. Violation 4, aggressive tone during HOA interaction. Yes, Karen sided me for my tone. At the bottom was a signature in dramatic cursive. Karen Woodmore, President, Oakwood Bluffs, HOA. And in all caps below it, premonitions. Required in 48 hours, or fines will be issued. I sat on my porch swing, reading the letter and sipping my coffee, trying not to laugh. I wasn't surprised, really. I'd worked in real estate for a long time, and I'd seen this kind of thing before. People who let their tiny sliver of authority swell into a full-blown God complex. But what struck me wasn't the rules, it was how personal she was making it. This wasn't about aesthetics. This was about control. I watched her that morning from my office window. Karen marching from house to house with her little clipboard, smiling at some neighbors, scolding others. Like a suburban traffic cop for vibes. She even stopped to scowl at my mailbox, as if it had personally offended her ancestors. And then I saw her pause in front of 243 Oakwood, the brown shutter duplex 3 houses down from mine. That house wasn't just another neighbor's place. I owned that property. Now, the woman who lived there, Miss Rojas, was a sweet retired teacher who had been renting the place for 5 years. I had inherited her lease when I bought the unit from the previous owner. She paid on time, kept her yard nice, never caused a problem. Karen stood there with one hand on her hip, talking to her through the screen door. I couldn't hear them, but I could read Karen's posture. Stern, lecturing, a friendly reminder coded in condescension. Ms. Rojas just nodded nervously, clutching the edge of the doorframe like she wanted to disappear. That was it. It wasn't just me she was going after. It was anyone she thought she could intimidate, anyone she thought didn't belong in her imaginary HOA kingdom. She had no idea. The next day, I got a second letter, this time hand-delivered by Karen herself. She knocked once, then let herself slide the envelope through the door slot and walk away. No eye contact, no small talk. Inside the envelope, another list of violations. At $250, 0 cents temporary fine for disregarding HOA instructions. And a printed invitation to attend the next HOA compliance review meeting, where my status as a property occupant would be reviewed by the board. It read like a courtroom summons. Didn't respond much yet, because I had something better than a rebuttal. I had receipts. And over the next 2 days, I gathered my portfolio together. LLC ownership documents, lease agreements, title records, all showing exactly what I owned on Oakwood Bluffs. It was more than just my house. It was 2 duplexes, 3 single-family homes, 1 fourplex, and a corner lot, currently being held for development. 12 total units, all legally mine, all acquired through different holding companies I'd built over years of investing. I hadn't meant to reveal it this way, but if Karen wanted to throw down, I was ready to go all in. Because while she was playing HO Monopoly, I had quietly been buying up the real board. And the best part? Her best friend, the one who always walked with her during compliance patrol, was renting a townhouse I now owned. I was her landlord. Let that sink in. So when I RSVP'd to the HOA meeting, I didn't come empty-handed. I came with a folder and a plan. The night of the HOA meeting, I showed up in jeans and a hoodie carrying a manila folder stuffed with ownership documents and a hot coffee I didn't even plan to drink. Karen, meanwhile, looked like she was attending a Senate confirmation hearing. She wore a gray pantsuit, had color-coded folders stacked like artillery, and sat at the head of the long folding table at the community clubhouse. Her smile was tight, her voice clipped, and her eyes were scanning me like she couldn't wait to pounce. "Let's get started," she said sharply. "We have an agenda, and we will stick to it. Mr." She looked down at her notes. Walker has been invited to discuss several violations and explain his conduct. I didn't say a word. No, not yet. She rattled off the usual nonsense. Misaligned trash bins, unauthorized door color, boxes visible from a window. But then she added a new one. An accusation of deliberate disruption of neighborhood decorum and refusal to acknowledge HOA authority. That's when I cleared my throat. "Excuse me, Karen," I said. "Before we get too deep into that, I just want to confirm something for the record." She blinked. "You said earlier that my status as a resident was in question." "That's correct. You're not on the HOA approved buyer registry. And no board member signed off on your residency. Your closing was never reviewed." I smiled. "Right. That's because I didn't just buy one home on this block." The room fell quiet. Even the neighbors who usually nodded along with Karen leaned in. I pulled a folder from my bag and laid it on the table. "Here are the LLC titles and property tax receipts for all 12 units I currently own within Oakwood Bluffs." I let the silence hang. "I own your neighbor's duplex," I said, nodding toward a man at the far end of the table. "The corner fourplex down the street. And, Karen," I turned to face her fully, "I own the townhouse your best friend Melissa is renting." Melissa, who had been sitting 2 chairs down from Karen, literally choked on her sparkling water. I wasn't being smug, I was being precise, calm, professional. But I didn't stop there. I've kept a low profile because I don't like drama. But when someone tries to evict me from my own home, finds me without legal basis, and intimidates residents like Ms. Rojas, who's lived here peacefully for years, it becomes my business. Karen tried to recover. That doesn't change the fact that this community is governed by the HOA and you've failed to comply with the rules. I nodded. "Let's talk about that." I pulled out another document. Oakwood Bluffs HOA's governing charter states that any owner with over 30% property representation in the community is allowed to call for a vote to reassign board members and initiate new elections. I looked around the room. I currently represent 41%. Dead silence. Even Karen's little stack of color-coded folders couldn't protect her now. "I'm calling for a vote to restructure the board," I continued, "effective immediately." Karen stood up so fast her chair screeched backward. "This is a setup. This is a hostile takeover. You can't do this." "You're right, we can." Stan, one of the older residents, raised his hand. "I second the motion." Melissa, still stunned, probably wondering if her rent was going to go up, nodded slowly. "I support it." Within minutes, the board had flipped. Karen's face went white. "I've given years to this community," she hissed. "You think you can just come in and rewrite the rules?" I met her gaze calmly. "No, Karen, you rewrote the rules the day you tried to evict someone without knowing who they were." If the look on Karen's face when I revealed I owned 41% of the block was satisfying, the vote that followed was the cherry on top. We didn't even need to drag it out. Once I invoked the ownership clause in the HOA charter, yes, the one she'd probably never read past page 5, everyone knew it was over. I calmly asked the board to take a roll call vote to remove and replace all existing HOA officers. Karen started protesting, but Stan, the retired accountant who'd lived on the street since '88, tapped the table and said, "Let's do it by the book." It was quick and brutal. Out of the 7 voting members present, 5 voted yes to remove Karen as president. 1 abstained, her best friend Melissa, who looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Karen voted no, obviously, but it didn't matter. The majority had spoken. She was out. Her power, her clipboard, her imaginary crown, gone, all in under 5 minutes. She tried to argue that the meeting was invalid, that I'd manipulated the system, and that she would take this to county court. But the room wasn't buying it. Not anymore. Especially when I pulled out my final piece of paper. A proposal for a temporary leadership committee made up of homeowners and renters, yes, renters too, to revisit the HOA rules and make them fair, clear, and respectful. Stan immediately backed it. The room clapped. Karen stood frozen, trembling with rage. She grabbed her tote bag, scooped up her stack of violation notices like they were sacred scrolls, and stormed toward the door. But just before leaving, she turned back and hissed, "You won't last. People like you come and go. I built this community." I looked her dead in the eye, calm, clear. "No, Karen, you built a wall. I'm just tearing it down." And then she left. No applause, no sympathy, just the soft thud of the door closing behind her. After the meeting, people lingered. Some shook my hand. Some apologized for not speaking up sooner, for letting her dominate for years. One woman even admitted she'd almost sold her house last year just to get away from the HOA madness. "Thank you for doing what the rest of us were too scared to do," she said. I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt relieved, like a massive weight had been lifted off the whole neighborhood. And yet, the best part was still to come. You see, while Karen had lost her position as HOA president, she was still living in one of the townhomes on the block. A townhome owned by me. Her lease, as it happened, was up for renewal in 3 months. I hadn't planned on doing anything about that. Until I got home the next morning and found one last letter shoved under my front door, typed in bold, blocky font. "You may have bullied your way into the HOA, but you'll never be part of this neighborhood. Some people just don't fit in. Enjoy your victory. It won't last." No signature, but I didn't need one. Karen was the type to lose power and still try to swing. That sealed it. I called my property manager and told them not to renew her lease when it came due. No drama, no revenge, just business. 3 months later, a U-Haul appeared outside her townhome. She didn't say goodbye, didn't look anyone in the eye. She packed up her porch flamingos, her gnome statue army, and left. No HOA title, no clipboard, no control. Just another name on a tenant list marked "Do Not Renew." After Karen's U-Haul rolled out of Oakwood Bluffs, the air felt different. Lighter. It was like the entire neighborhood had exhaled for the first time in years. Front porches that had been barren now had potted plants. Kids started riding their bikes freely again. Neighbors actually talked to one another without looking over their shoulders like they were about to get cited for improper conversation volume. As for me, I wasn't interested in becoming some power-hungry reverse Karen. I didn't buy this block to rule it. I bought it because I saw potential. And after watching what unchecked small-scale tyranny could do to good people, I knew exactly what not to do. So I started over. I worked with Stan and a few others to form an interim HOA board, this time with real representation. Homeowners and renters, English speakers and ESL families. People who had felt invisible under Karen's reign finally had a seat at the table. We did away with all the fake violations. No more fines for flower colors, no more drama over garden gnomes, and definitely no more dictating mailbox shades like we were trying to win suburbia's most monochrome street. Instead, we focused on things that mattered. Safety lighting around the sidewalks, a small fund for elderly or disabled residents who needed help with yard work, hosting a quarterly neighborhood potluck that turned out to be the best idea I've ever had, because nothing brings people together like too much mac and cheese and a cooler full of sodas. But the biggest change? We created a new rule, just one. Respect your neighbor or pack your things. Simple, clear, enforced through decency, not documents. It worked. Even the folks who'd once silently followed Karen around with their clipboards seemed relieved to stop pretending they enjoyed being HOA stormtroopers. As for Miss Rojas, the sweet retiree Karen tried to intimidate, she stayed. I surprised her with a rent freeze for 2 years and a thank you note for putting up with all the nonsense. She cried when she read it, said no one had ever done anything like that for her. That moment made all the legal fees worth it. Now I wake up every morning, grab a cup of coffee, and sit on my porch swing just like I did that first day. Only now, there's no letter taped to my door. No threats, no citations, no Karen. Just peace, laughter, a community that actually feels like one. Sometimes I walk the block just to take it all in. The gardens blooming, the flags waving, the people waving back. I'll see someone painting their front door lime green and think, yeah, let 'em live. And sometimes I walk past the old townhome where Karen used to live. It's been rented to a young couple now. Super chill folks, always outside walking their rescue dog, always smiling. They've got string lights across their porch and a hammock in the yard. I never told them who used to live there. I didn't mean to. The energy's completely different now. But there's still one small reminder. Just a little brass plaque I had engraved and bolted to the front gate of the HOA meeting room. It reads, "Power is temporary, respect is earned." I didn't sign it. But I didn't have to. People know. And best of all, they're finally proud to call this place home. Moral of the story? Don't assume the new guy is just the new guy. He might be your neighbor. He might be your landlord. He might be the one who turns your fake HOA kingdom into a real community. And if you're going to try to evict someone, make damn sure they don't own the deed to your future. Thanks for watching. Drop your worst HOA story in the comments. I'll be right there with you, clipboard not in hand.